Thank you for downloading and listening to episode 3 of the Podcast Digest. How is this play? I want to thank you all guys for listening to the Podcast Digest. This is episode 3 and the show is off to a great start. I want to thank each and every one of you who have downloaded, who have listened, who've left a review on iTunes. I did receive my first iTunes review. Thank you, Melissa B. I really appreciate the positive feedback and the encouraging words, and I would love for you as well, just like Melissa did, to leave a review on iTunes. Let me know what you think of the show, especially if you're thinking 5 stars. It really, really helps me out, helps give the show attention, and hopefully reach more people just like you. So let's get started with this week's episode. I've got a great one in store for you guys, 2 new shows that I'm really excited to tell you about. But first, a little bit more about where we stand with the Podcast Digest. I've been working real hard for the first couple of weeks on getting everything up to speed. So the websites, the links, my office space, my little mini studio, as I call it. I've been purchasing some new equipment. I'm now working on an external monitor, so I don't have to edit on my little 11-inch MacBook Air anymore. This will be a huge help this week for me. Also, I've done some changes with the website. If you go to thepodcastdigest.info, it's all being used with Google's Blogger service, and it doesn't have as many bells and whistles as, say, maybe a Squarespace or some wonderful things I've seen done with WordPress, but it's a start. And I've been including a number of different items that Google makes available. One of them is that you can subscribe by email. And so if there is a new show coming out or a new text post, blog post that I put up there, you'll be notified by email. So rather than checking the site every couple of days to figure out if I've done something new, just go ahead and put your email address in the follow by email box right there on the podcastdigest.info page, and you'll get an email every time I change something or update something. So I thought that was a pretty neat way for you to stay in touch with what's happening new with the Podcast Digest. So let's start for our listener pro tip section this week. Before I get into my 2 show recommendations, I sort of wanted to talk to you. I wanted to hear from you on this listener pro tip section. What I want to know is, how do you listen to podcasts? I realized this week as I was listening to a couple of the shows that I'll be reviewing here in a minute, as well as my regular subscription list, that there's so many different ways you can listen to a podcast. And sort of throughout my week, I was sort of noting how many different ways I personally do. Are you one of those folks who consume them on your smartphone? Do you sort of have the earbuds around wherever you go and sort of with podcasts in your ears throughout the day? That's probably my default mode that I do listen with my earbuds most evenings, and it's probably one of my favorite ways to consume the podcasts I listen to. But there's so many others. What about your speakerphone? Oftentimes during the day at my job, I will set my phone on my desk while I'm taking care of the bills, working the main business I have during the day. Podcasts will be coming through the speaker on the iPhone. How about Bluetooth? Do you guys use Bluetooth? I am a huge Bluetooth fan. I connect my smartphone to the Bluetooth system in my truck. I listen there. I also have Bluetooth speaker at home and a Bluetooth headset as well that I like listening to the podcasts on. How about anyone listen through Apple TV or maybe a Roku with the Stitcher app or TuneIn Radio? Those are all available on Roku. Any of you guys listen like that? I haven't done that one near as much, but I do have an Apple TV and a Roku where I could potentially listen to shows there. How about with people? Do any of you make podcast listening sort of a group effort? A couple of times over the last few weeks, I have actually taken a podcast and played it for my wife and my kids and said, hey guys, listen to this. I think you'll really like this. That's not very common, but I'm sort of curious. Is that something you do? Is this kind of a family affair or your roommates or friends? Do people kind of gather around to listen to a new episode? What about falling asleep with podcasts? I know for me, typically I like to fall asleep with the TV on. Many of you are probably that way, but lately I also will use the phone and the phone speaker and use the sleep timer function on some of the applications I listen to. As I've mentioned before, Pocket Cast is my preferred app. Set that sleep timer and fall asleep that way. So I'm really kind of curious as I realized there were so many different ways that I consume and listen to a podcast. I wondered what you did. Sort of, if there's something I haven't covered here or haven't mentioned, I'd love to hear about it. Sort of what's your routine? Are you a listener on your commute to work? Do you listen during your workday? How do you listen? What about time at home? Do you have the earbuds on? Are you sharing with family members via a Bluetooth speaker or Apple TV? want to hear from you, so let me know. Shoot me an email, thepodcastdigest@gmail.com. Leave me a comment on the blog post on the website, thepodcastdigest.info, and let me know how you do. I'd love to share your story on next week's episode with everyone else, especially if you have a unique setup or a particular way that you like to listen to podcasts. So let's talk about this week's recommendations, the two shows that I would like to talk to you about. And I'm really excited about these two. These two shows are a little newer. I believe they are both under 40 or 50 episodes, but these are some high quality shows that I really think you'll enjoy. Let me tell you a quick story first. When I was younger, sort of in the high school days, I had this group of friends, and this group of friends and I, we really got into movies and music, and they were the bedrock of many of the conversations we'd have. We'd get together, we'd talk about what the latest movie release is. Did you see this? What are you doing this weekend? Do you want to catch this concert or go to this movie? And it was really a neat place to sort of bond over what we liked, what we didn't like, what you thought of this particular movie, what you thought of that particular band. And if you thought the way I did, then you were sort of somebody I liked. Or if you had these strange desires or tastes for a particular type of music or movie, or thought something that was good that I didn't, I was like, oh, really? And why is that? And these two shows sort of remind me of those conversations when I was younger. They both focus sort of in on the entertainment area, and they both give you a lot of great information and commentary about the entertainment world. In addition, they're both shows that have been very active on Twitter, very socially engaged. They've been very supportive of me and the start that I'm trying to make here with the Podcast Digest. So I particularly wanted to put in a concerted effort to highlight these two shows to my audience, because I truly feel that you will receive great information, you will be entertained, and you'll also be helping support a couple of people who have been very supportive of me as well. So let's begin. Our first show recommendation this week is How Is This Movie podcast. The host is Dana Buckler, has also had occasional guest hosts in Jonathan Geneva. Lately, Dana's sort of been doing it more on his own. Show information is available at How Is This Movie's website, which is podomatic.com/profile/hitm podcast. That's HITM podcast. And this podcast, of course, is all about movies. And Dana has an almost encyclopedic knowledge of movies. And he also does a lot of research in his commentary about these movies. Often, though, there are not only singular movies, although he has done that. Recently, he's covered things like Jurassic Park, which was one of my favorite episodes he's done. But he also does sort of back catalog summaries and commentary. He's done those on M. Night Shyamalan and also with Batman, the Batman series of movies. And he puts this all together and intertwines sound clips, samples from the movie, and really get you to think about the last time you saw that, what your thoughts on that movie were. And I have found after listening to How Is This Movie that oftentimes I'll go and need to go check out Netflix and see if this is available, or go through my old DVD boxes. Do I still have that? I think I want to watch that again, because I didn't know this piece of information that Dana shared, or that backstory that he included us in on. For example, the recent show he did on the M. Night Shyamalan series of movies was really entertaining, and talked about how Shyamalan started with The Sixth Sense and sort of went to the peak of Hollywood, and then his slow descent over the years with more and more struggles in the industry and less quality, I guess you could say, in his movies, and how his reviews sort of tanked. It was a really interesting story and tale that I think anyone who has ever seen The Sixth Sense or likes the movie industry in general will find very entertaining and engaging. I mentioned the Jurassic Park episode. He does that as well with that. Found out some really interesting things that I never knew about how Jurassic Park got made, how Steven Spielberg got involved. Michael Crichton, of course, was the author of the book the Jurassic Park movies were based on, and sort of his involvement and role in that up to this point. And Dana does a great job bringing you through the history and through the tale of how a movie got made, how a movie was received, the important players, be it actors or directors, and how they sort of partook in the process, what their experience was, what their thoughts are now today on looking back. It was just a really, really great show all around. I've also mentioned as well the Robin Williams tributes that have occurred throughout the summer since Robin passed. How Is This Movie? And Dana did another amazing tribute, wonderfully assembled with clips and content from his movies and from stand-up, and Dana sort of chronicles Robin's whole theatrical history, and just required listening for any Robin Williams fan. Check out How Is This Movie? And if you want to begin somewhere, begin with the Robin Williams tribute episode that Dana did. And after that, I have a feeling you will want to go back and scroll through the list of show titles that Dana's put together for How Is This Movie? And you can just pluck them off with which ones interest you, which movies you're a fan of, or maybe which movies you wanted to learn more about. And that is basically exactly what I've done in the last 3 or 4 weeks that I've been a subscriber to How Is This Movie. I've gone back and made it through probably 60 to 70% of Dana's back catalog, and I'm still working through them, and I've enjoyed every single episode that he's put out there. It's really a phenomenal show. It's entertaining, it's informative, and one of the best things about it is he does something in this show that I strive for, that I imagine many shows strive for, which is when you're done listening to an episode or two, you actually want to take a particular action. As I mentioned, I want to go out and check Netflix for this movie. I want to, in my case, talk about Dana's show, How Is This Movie, here on the Podcast Digest. You may want to go through IMDb and check out credits or other movies that some of these directors or actors were in. And that, I think, is something we all strive for in the podcasting community is how can you have people, when they're done listening to your show, want to go out and actually take an action? Dana does a phenomenal job with that. And I think if you are any kind of movie fan, you need to check out How Is This Movie and Dana's podcast. So that is my first recommendation this week. How Is This Movie? Podcast with Dana Buckler. For our second show this week, a very similar show. In fact, these shows do have a relationship. Dana from How Is This Movie was a guest on my second show recommendation, and that is the That'll Play with Matt and John. It's That'll Play podcast. The hosts again are Matt Candela and John Nuzzi. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, John. Their website is www.thatwillplaypod.com, which I do want to mention. If you check out that website, it's one of the best websites I've seen for a podcast. Honestly, I kind of want to reach out to them and ask them how they put that together and see if they can offer me any suggestions or help with the Podcast Digest website. But that's a story for another day. John and Matt take a look at movies. As I mentioned, Dana from How Is This Movie was a guest, but they also talk about other areas of entertainment. They talk about in their show often how one of the hosts is more passionate or interested in the music side of entertainment and the other one more interested in movies. And this creates sort of a great back and forth, a great ebb and flow to each episode of That'll Play that comes out. There's a slightly different focused and kind of they focus in on different angles of the entertainment industry, and it makes for a nice variety week in and week out. Another thing that they've done a lot more lately is include guests. One of their more recent episodes, and one that I understand has been getting a lot of attention, has been one with Jessica Howell, an actress who's done a lot of webisodes. She's a comedian, recently been cast as an actress for The Masters of Sex on Showtime, and I think it's definitely worth a listen. Just hearing Jessica and her passion for what she does in life, the creative outlet that is acting. She really has an enthusiasm for what she does that comes bursting through the speakers of whatever you're listening to this podcast on. It forced me to go to her website, look up her IMDb page, and I was like, wow, she was really impressive sounding, and it sort of made me want to learn more about her. So that was a great episode. But really, John and Matt have put together a phenomenal show here. They go and they cover some personal stories. Recently, they talked about how they took a trip to Montreal for a bachelor party, and they just simply talked about their observations of the city, what they liked from the food, from the overall impressions and culture of Montreal. In other episodes, they've talked about different elements of entertainment. They've talked about guests from other shows coming on, and they're talking about music. One of their recent episodes, they've talked at length about the soundtracks from some of the movies you've seen in the past, and which are the best soundtracks, which ones have stood out to them or stood the test of time. And I thought that was a really interesting episode that it was definitely worth a listen as well. I mentioned guests. They have had any number of guests on their show, and they are really good interviewers. You wonder sometimes about a dual host show and how an interview panel would work, and they really handle it well with a back and forth in a respectful way towards the guests. They really let the guests have the floor, and it's wonderfully informing. This, as I mentioned, is a newer show. It's sort of just getting off the ground. I believe they're only about 20 episodes in, so they're definitely worth checking out. Jump on this bandwagon now. I really feel that you will enjoy this show if you take a chance. If I could recommend one episode that I would start on, it would be the recent one they did with the interview with Jessica Howell. It was a phenomenal episode, and I understand, as I mentioned, they are receiving a lot of attention for that episode, as they should. Their production values are wonderful. These guys do a great job. They talked about it in an early episode. I think their first episode, they weren't happy with it in some way, and they took a few weeks break and made some upgrades to their setup and maybe some changes to the format and how they were approaching things, and they came back and delivered what I consider to be one of the most well put together newer shows that I've listened to. Really, it is an inspiration for me to think that 20 episodes in, that they've reached this level of production value, of entertainment, of the website quality. They mix in a lot of great sound drops and sound effects. They've really been turning that focus up lately, and it is impressive. So that's my second show recommendation. Check out That'll Play with Matt and John, thatwillplaypod.com. Subscribe, take a listen, go back. This one really fits in the reference I made at the beginning of this week's episodes, where I talked about if when you were younger you used to sit around with all your friends talking movies and music about what you liked, what was great, what you didn't like even. That'll Play with Matt and John will give you that feeling again. Like you're back with your old friends in high school days. You're talking about movies and music, what you like, what you didn't, or just stories about your weekend or what you enjoyed. And the cool thing about these guys is, back then, if you ever had the feeling, hey, I'd love to talk to this actor or this actress or get this person's opinion, or hey, this new guy came over and we were talking about so-and-so, they put this all on a podcast for you to listen to. And I really think that it is worth your listen. Check them out. So those are our two show recommendations this week for episode 3 of the Podcast Digest. How is this movie? And That'll Play with Matt and John. I hope that you guys will subscribe to both of those shows, sample them, give them more than one episode to try. Maybe you just plucked off one that isn't right up your alley, but with both these shows, I think all of them will be. So that's it for this week. If you guys have any feedback for me, I would love to hear from you. I'm on Twitter at PodDigest. Shoot me an email, thepodcastdigest@gmail.com. Feel free to leave a comment on this post on the website when it goes live later today, thepodcastdigest.info. Also want to let you know the Podcast Digest is now on Facebook. I have created a Facebook community page for the Podcast Digest. Just put in the Podcast Digest in the Facebook search bar and you can find me there. That'll do it for this week, and until episode 4 next week, I look forward to hearing from you guys, and thank you so much for listening.